Welcome. Great to have you here. This is a unique moment, a moment that unites all of us. We all face anxiety and loss. We all see broken systems. We all experience the impact of the climate crisis. This is a unique moment.
Welcome.
This is a turning point if we choose to make it one. This is a moment to reflect, to learn, to share, and to co-create. And I invite you to contribute. I ask you to contribute. I ask you to partner to fix broken systems. I ask you to join the movement so everyone can step into their change-making power. I ask you to nominate the next generation of changemakers. And I ask you to share your wisdom, your knowledge, your expertise. And I ask you to donate to support changemakers. This is our moment to fix the world. This is our moment to contribute. Today is the day, and you are the one.
Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you here joining us for the Ashoka Changemaker Summit. I hope you've had a great day so far, full of sessions that we've run throughout the day, and you've taken away a lot of great insights from those sessions. My name is Shafat Khan, and I'm part of the community team of Ashoka UK and Ireland. And I sincerely thank you for joining us. If you're in Europe, it's quite late for you, and I'm really grateful for your attendance. If you're in the US, it's mid-afternoon. And if you're in the Asian time zone, good morning. I'm here to facilitate a conversation about how young changemakers from around the world are leading a new way forward as we are trying to navigate through these uncertain times. This session is particularly special because it was created together with an amazing group of young people, friends of Ashoka, who helped us by sharing their ideas, personal stories, and constructive feedback. Thank you so much, Cornelia and Anton from Sweden, Emanuela and Letizia from Italy, Mary from Austria, and Guzman from Spain. With me today, we have some inspiring young changemakers from the UK, Spain, Brazil, and the United States. I have the pleasure of welcoming award-winning activist Olivia, who is calling from Manchester, England, and is currently working at a school to support kids with disabilities. Next, we have Midria, who is a Brazilian poet, social studies student at the University of Sao Paulo, and one of the first Ashoka young changemakers in her country. We also have Amaya, who is a Spanish community builder working on empowering young and local talent to unite with other social agents. And last but not least, we have Victor, who is an Ashoka young changemaker from the United States, has been featured in publications by MTV, Vice News, PBS, etc., for his work around education activism and an Ashoka young changemaker. We would love to invite your participation during this session through questions and comments for our panelists through the chat feature that you see on Swapcard. But first, let me introduce you to my colleague, Katerina, from our team in Ashoka, Belgium, who will be coordinating the chat.
Hi, everyone. I'll be your tech host tonight or this afternoon for some of you, and we'll be facilitating the questions. So please engage and write your comments. Enjoy the session.
Thank you, Katerina. To frame our conversation and just to share a few reflections with you, we are in a historic moment, and I'm sure you've heard that across all sessions in the agenda today. If this year has taught us anything, it's how quickly things can change beyond recognition and how vital our skills of adaptation and resilience are. The COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in severe economic and social impacts around the world. Young people are particularly vulnerable to the disruptions the pandemic has caused, and many are now at risk of being left behind in education, economic opportunities, and health and well-being during a crucial stage of their life development. A recent global survey published by the International Labor Organization earlier this year found that the impacts of the pandemic on young people, particularly among young women, young youth, and youth in lower income countries, are systemic, deep, and disproportionate. Lockdown closures of schools, universities, and training organizations affected 73% of the survey respondents of that International Labor Organization report, with almost 1 in 8 seeing their education and training provision come to a complete halt since the start of the pandemic. And despite efforts to continue educational provision through distance learning or by moving in-person classes online, 65% of young people reported that they had learned less during the crisis. 38% of those young people globally are uncertain about their future career prospects. Now, that sounds like a very sad story, but at the same time, however, young people are stepping up as change makers through this crisis, through public health promotion, volunteering, and various kinds of innovation with social impact. Around the world, governments and the private sector are partnering with young people to launch initiatives that leverage these young people's efforts to support their communities. Through voluntary initiatives, many young people have also supported vulnerable members of their community, for example, in the distribution of groceries and medicines. However, this is not new. Young people have been part of some of the biggest social and environmental movements of the modern era. This culture of young people change making just hasn't been encouraged enough in our homes, our schools, and our society. I want you to take a second to just close your eyes and imagine a world where stepping up to create change is the new normal. At Ashoka, we want to ensure that all citizens, and young people in particular, are empowered to be part of the change they want to see in their communities, neighborhoods, and cities as we work towards the theme of this whole event, rediscovering certainty. And for that, we need a new mindset, a behavioral shift. We need everyone to step up and be a change maker. I am blessed and really grateful to be in conversation with some amazing young people who are change makers in their own rights, who've created a huge impact in their local communities, some in the world. So let's hear from some of our panelists who role model change making in action, right? So Midria, let's start with you. So could you tell us a little bit about your personal change-making journey and therefore what it means to become a change maker and why is it powerful?
Thanks a lot, Shafa. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who's listening to us. So I think that to talk about my change-making journey, it's really crucial that I actually contextualize where I come from and what were the conditions in which I was born and raised. So I was born in the east side of the city of São Paulo. São Paulo is the biggest city in Brazil, and it has many opportunities, but it has at the same time many inequalities. So I was born in the outskirts of town, and I remember growing up having this very strict relation with school and always feeling very empowered through school, mostly because of the teachers, not necessarily because of the structure of school, which is very failed in most of the countries and states. But I remember always having this desire to read a lot, to write a lot. I took part in a few book clubs while I was a teenager. And by the time I was at high school, I remember I had this very important and magical moment for my life, which was when I started to be a part of the recital that happens in my neighborhood. Until then, I had this vision of lack relating to my neighborhood. I would always see my whole neighborhood as a place that still needed things, still needed structure, still needed investment coming from the government and from the state as a whole. And in the recital, I started to see that there were actually artists, there were actually intellectual people, there were actually all kinds of talents being raised and being germinated in my neighborhood. There was also the space in which I started to see the importance of writing in a critical manner. I used to write poetry, but it was much more a contemplative way of writing it. And in the recital, I started to understand how much writing is a critical and important tool for social transformation, because it's, as many people say, to solve a problem, first you got to know that there's a problem. So if we have many people telling it aloud in poetry, in movies, in music, and all kinds of manifestations, are this artistic or not, there is a much cleaner and easier way to go through transformation. By the time I was going to university in 2017, I started to cross the town daily, 2 hours going, 2 hours coming back from university. And hence I had 20 hours and not 24 hours in my day, less time to study, less time to, anyways, to dedicate myself to all I was learning. And in 2018, it was the first year that the university in which I study, which is the University of São Paulo, actually accepted the affirmative policies for Black, Indigenous, poor people as a whole. It was a really important step, but it was actually taken very late because this is the most well-known university in the whole country, and it was the third last to accept it. But it was okay, it was there. And two of my friends, two Black friends from university, we were thinking about how to make a more receptive welcoming to all of those students who were getting into university because of the affirmative policies. And then we started doing poetry slam competition, and that began to be something much bigger than we thought it would be at the beginning, because it did not only became a very receptive space for all of those students like us that were Black, that were Indigenous, that were coming from the outskirts of town, that had been historically marginalized from the university symbolically and physically. But it was also a space that would start to attract people from other parts of the city and people who are not necessarily students. It's a long story, but in hence, I think that my story of change making goes along with this understanding of how powerful it is to tell your narrative to others and to understand what kind of collective narrative we can frame by telling our personal stories.
That's beautiful. And Midria, in your journey as a change maker, is there something you wish you had known when you first got started? A lot of our participants or audience members are young change makers or young people themselves, and they might be wondering, well, Midria seems like she's kind of figured everything out. Like, she seems like she has an amazing career. How do I get started, right? So could you share a little bit about anything you wish you had known when you started?
I think that looking backwards, I don't feel like that was one thing that I didn't know that I wish I would have known right now. I think that that was actually very important because we didn't have that much of expectations about it. And I think that's it. Like, if I could actually assume something great that I didn't know before, and I actually wish that I didn't actually know at that time, indeed, is not to have that much of expectations, not to have that much of, like, I want to do something really huge, and just go with the flow and see where things go by starting to act. So if you start acting, see what happens, and then you can, like, reshape your initiative. But the lack of experience, which I think that nobody has lack of experience. We maybe have other experiences that are not necessarily related to the path that we are following right now. But the lack of experience might actually be great because we never thought that we would actually make a competition that would become an important event in the entire university. We were just thinking about our course, and then it became something bigger than we could have ever imagined.
Great. Thank you for sharing. It's such an important message, right? We often always get scared by the future. How do I make this big? How do I make the biggest impact that I can? But it's often in your own community that you can create those lasting changes. Thank you, Midria. Liv, if I can pull you in a little bit, you've talked about, in our conversations before, you've talked about the role of adult allies in your journey as a change maker. Can you unpack that for us a little bit, and why do you think it's important for young people to work with adults?
So, hello everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to young people, first of all. And as I explain my change making story, you'll come to learn that that is a key theme of my change making journey. So I started my change making journey when I was 11, and that was with a Manchester-based charity called Reclaim, which provides working class young people with a platform to use their voices and get heard in society. One opportunity they provided me with in particular was to go to the Mayor of Manchester's mayoral campaign and get involved in change making as a young person. And the main aim of this event was for young people to be involved in policy making and making decisions that will affect their future. And as the event went on, I started to realise I was the only young person in the room, by which I mean the only under 18. There were a lot of adults speaking on behalf of young people, but not of no young people in the room talking on their experience, what they think about making change. And I often think that there's an illusion or an assumption that young people can't have an opinion on such adult issues because we can't vote, and our age is seen as a lack of maturity and that we don't have an opinion on these things. And I'm a very opinionated woman. That was not going to go well with me. So obviously I had to stand up and say something and challenge the lack of young people in the room. And I expressed the fact that transport and the costs are just damaging, and the amount young people pay to go to school then takes away the opportunities that they can have outside of school. So some young people have to pay for 2 buses to get to college, and that adds up to £5-10. And that may mean that they can't go out on the weekend, they can't go to a museum, they can't go to a sports event. And school should not be the only thing that we use public transport for. So I kind of expressed my opinion, and from that came the Hour Pass, which is a bus pass for 16 to 18-year-olds in Greater Manchester. They pay a one-off fee and then of £10, and then they get free travel throughout Greater Manchester, and they also get access to other opportunities within the city and just to experience life, because transport should not be limited just to school. And I was not going to allow that to just be the only way we can go. So my main point is this would not have happened without adults listening. If Andy Burnham didn't listen to me, then there wouldn't have only been a big problem, but we wouldn't have seen this great change. And it's positive change, and it made me feel included in making young people's futures better and making the young people in Greater Manchester's lives even a little bit easier, because it meant they didn't have to necessarily spend all this money to get to school, and they also had the opportunity to go to extracurricular outside of school and participate in things that they're truly passionate about. So this really showed me that adults need to listen. As much as young people need to speak up, adults need to work with us, collaborate with us instead of against us, because too often we see adults disregard our views because we're young and because we can't vote. But because we can't vote, it doesn't mean we don't have an opinion. It doesn't mean we don't want to see the wider society. And we just want you to work with us. And that is the most important thing when making change in your community, is collaborating with young people within your community instead of coming up with ideas that you think a young person might be passionate about, or you think young people might like this. No, just ask us and ask us what we think. And that is the main thing I'd say with adult allies, is you have to listen and work with us rather than against us.
Fantastic. And what a wonderful example of how if you just believe in yourself and your voice, you can actually create an impact, right? A lot of us feel like our voices are not being heard, and that includes a bunch of minority groups, but young people are part of that. So thank you, Liv. Amaya, I'll move on to you. How has the pandemic been like for you? Have you seen or noticed some changes around your community? Because I know you're very involved.
So first of all, I wanted to thank all the team of Ashoka for bringing us this amazing opportunity, and all the people who is watching us worldwide. Thanks to you. So from a general perspective, I think that the pandemic has shown us that nature is always more powerful than the human race. Even though we can develop amazing technology and new tools, we will never be able to control everything around us. So yeah, we are vulnerable. All of a sudden, everything changed. University closed, bars closed, everything broke down, and COVID-19 has put the world upside down. So now we can design together this new normal, and it's time to transform all our problems into opportunities. This is something I have learned during the pandemic, that the highest challenge now is unity. We have to be united now more than ever, because this is the most powerful tool we have to keep going as a society.
Wonderful. And could you touch a little bit on, I know you work with young people across Spain. How do you think young people can contribute to creating the communities of empathy and trust that we all are striving for?
So during the lockdown, I created a network, a national network of students. The main goal was to help students from high school to prepare their exams to do selectividad, which is the final exam in high school to access university. And this is why I discovered how young people is super powerful to contribute to create communities of empathy and trust, as you said. So in some years' time, young people will lead the world. So the opportunity to change the rules is in our hands, and to boost that behavioral shift that you named before, no? So how can we do these things? First of all, know yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What is your passion? What is your mission? Be authentic, no? I really believe that self-knowledge is essential to unleash our change maker power. After knowing yourself, you have to open your eyes to your environment and make an effort to understand it. So turn on the empathy with the world around you, but also with the people of your community. This will help you to develop a critical thinking and to transform our society, always taking into account the common good, no? Third, as young people, we have to think out of the box and to apply different and innovative perspective, no? The Z generation, has many skills such as flexibility, adaptability, open-mindedness. I don't know how you say this in English. So we have to use them. If there is no path, we have to build a path. If there are no opportunities, we have to create them. And we also have to learn from other generation. It is crucial that adults listen to our voices, because young people are amazing, yes. We have a lot of energy. We are highly motivated to make this world a better place. But the thing is that we lack experience. So we also have to listen to the adults, because they can teach us everything they have learned thanks to their experience and their past. So I think that the best thing to do is to write together the next chapter or this new normal. And yes, we have to work with others, because betting on collaboration instead of competition is always a good thing to do. Synergies and alliance are super powerful. So I would like to highlight the message of trying to create multidisciplinary and diverse teams, because with different perspectives and skills, everything goes better. And to focus on the things we have in common and not on the aspects that differentiate us. Sharing is caring. And last but not least, I will say that we have to base our relationships on trust. To trust other people and to expect the best from them, because everyone is a potential change maker, and we have to take the most of these aspects.
Fantastic. What a powerful line, right? Build our relationships based on trust. So simple, yet so powerful. Cool. Thank you, Maya. I'll bring you back in. Victor, let's hear from you. You're based, I think, outside of the US now, but you're originally from the United States, and it's been quite a lot of news in the country so far. So curious how you're doing, and more specifically, I think the work that you do specifically during this time of uncertainty is so powerful, right? And I would love for you to share what you're doing. But the question I have for you is, how do you think young people can identify the problem that they want to solve, right? We all heard from the panelists about certain problems that they wanted to solve, but for an audience member who's, let's say, is a young person, what is that first step of identifying the problem? Does it come naturally, or is it something you have to train for?
Yeah, thank you so much, Shafat, and thank you, Katarina. Thank you to Ashoka and all the rest of the panelists that are here with me today to speak about this topic. The first thing that I do want to say is that the thing that makes us so similar, despite our backgrounds or where we come from around the world, is that not only do we have the passion to make change happen, but that we also feel urgent about those issues. And so the one thing that I do want to explain is that we are not driven just because we love it, but that because there's a gap in the system, or that also in the same time that there's something that is not being solved, that if you do not take action and step up to make change, then no one else would do so. And I think that just by that one simple message, that will garner your own ideas, foster your creativity, and take a little bit of a deeper look into what you believe is missing in your community, or missing in your local area, or just talking to various individuals, from your teachers to your friends to your mentors, what is actually happening, whether that's nationally or locally, that you can do to make a better difference, or even a positive difference in any sort of way possible. The first thing that I do also want to say is that we all started from ground zero at one point in time. And so this is just like the first starting step for us to get to our next level. When I started back with my change-making journey, I was about 15 years old, sitting inside the classroom, feeling very bored, and also at the same time, very not very innovative and creative, because all we were doing in class was regurgitating and memorizing information without the necessity of actually taking that skill into applying it to real-world applications. If a student likes science and really wanted to tackle issues such as environmental sustainability or mental wellness or other topics like that, why can't they take the skills that they learned inside the classroom and actually create social impact projects? Go to their local community, set up workshops, do conferences, speak to other individuals and young students, and get them to be more informed, so that by the time that we are able to, for example, vote or be able to go to university or attend various sessions, that we can actually drive more civil discourse than we would have originally. And so from that day on, that's when I started my nonprofit called InnovYouth, which is a youth-driven initiative that helps garner global-minded citizenship by hosting conferences around civic engagement, social responsibility, global leadership, and as well as Gen Z. And so through that kind of particular conference experience, I think I've learned a lot about the fact that young people are just ready to start making things happen. And it's just a matter of really identifying key particular gaps in the system to see what is missing. if your school is not, giving you enough skills, or if your school is not providing you enough resources or materials, or just like Olivia just mentioned earlier, if your city is not providing enough resources or skills to help you get from one place to another, then identify those key gaps and actually start looking for allies, as what Amaya said and also Mudria said, to start fostering that team collective bonding activity. And then from there, start to grow a collective movement. It all starts from zero, but I will assure you that it's just like an exponential function, like all of us have realized, that you start small and it might be a really slow step in the very beginning, but as soon as you start gaining more traction or more particular positive responses or reactions, you will start getting a really, really positive interaction, then you will have a lot more people behind you ready to support you at all fields. So that's kind of a quick message that I would give to the audience and to anyone that wants to start their change-making journey or already are, but wants to look for other ways to start thinking it from a different perspective.
Incredible. Cool. So I'll pause for a second. Let's get some questions from the audience. I think the chat is really being engaged. So we have a question. I think this is for all the panelists. In your own unique experiences, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing young people in today's world? So what is the biggest opportunity for this generation is, I guess, another way to put it. So how about Amaya, we'll start with you this time, and then would love each of the panelists to address the question.
I think that the greatest opportunity now is that we live in a connected world. Now we can get in contact with people from all around the world, like in this panel, and to work with them, even though we are not physically with them. So take the most of this opportunity and learn from all cultures, all countries, all societies. No, it's a huge way of learning and of growing as a person, and we can also get inspired by initiatives being carried out in the other part of the world, so and replicate them in our communities. I think that this is an amazing opportunity, but we also have many challenges. No, for example, we have too many opportunities, so it is quite simple to get distracted by our mobile phones or by things that do not make any good for us.
Great, thank you. Liv, what about you? What do you think?
I think there's so many challenges that young people face in a minute, one of which is being stereotypes. And there's so many different unique stereotypes to individuals, but I think an umbrella kind of stereotype is our age, and people don't take us seriously because, especially from what I've experienced, is people don't take us seriously because they think we're too young or we can't have opinions on such big issues. And I've definitely found, I know it sounds like such a minor thing, but I only turned 18 3 months ago, and in those 3 months, I've been listened to more than I have in the time before my 18 years. And I think people need to start listening and engaging with us. And I think, especially through the pandemic, the biggest opportunity, as much as like mobile phones are a big distraction, I feel like that's one of the things that has brought us together globally. And we've been speaking like together on big issues, on big campaigns, and I'm seeing more young people using our voices and speaking up and just engaging in the world, and really shocking some of the older generation, which is, I'm quite proud of young people.
Amazing. Victor, what about you? What do you think?
I think the biggest challenge is to just figure out like what to do in this pandemic, because there's so many different opportunities that come arise that, like, although it's a positive aspect, there's also just many different exploration of topics and many different ways to connect with different people. But I do want to say that the biggest thing is to start connecting at a young age with other individuals that not only are just in a similar interest space, but also can provide a little bit more of understanding that you want to make something happen. And so whether that's what Amaya does with her work of just connecting young people together, to also determining that there's a lot of us ready around the world starting to engage in various topics, so that if you're interested in science or technology or health or public policy, environment, whatever that you want to explore, that there is community out there for you, and all you need to do is start searching and start Googling. And just from that simple message can get you so many different resources, from locating people like, our role models, or who we are, or, where we are working, or just any information can be handled simply through the search of a button on social media. So I think the use of social media really play a positive aspect and role towards identifying key allies, and also at the same time provide a little bit more of inspiration towards what's going to happen in the next couple of years.
Incredible. And it's funny, a lot of conversations I have with adults, people always refer to technology as the problem, but both you and Liv just mentioned two forms of technology that's actually a solution, right? So that's a big insight from this session. Midria, what about you? We'll finish off this question.
So I think I'll localize a bit the answer. I think that coming from Brazil, one of the hardest challenges that we have, especially for Black indigenous youth, is being alive. I think that's a question that doesn't matter, that we cannot lose of sight that there are different youths all over the world. And here we have a Black young man dying every 23 minutes. So that's actually, I think that one of the challenges that we need to look at, the biggest one, which is being alive, and then what kind of life can we actually try for? I feel like most of the times what we have here, considering the kind of neighborhood I come from, considering the reality of public schools, is the expectation of just having a job and then having your own house and having a car and, building a family. And then after a few years, you retire and it's all good. So I think that we still need to include more aspects into this narrative, and we still need to claim social change as something that we all need to do. So this is a challenge, I think, because as there are many people still worried about being alive and having the minimal security to exist, social transformation sometimes for the majority of those might seem as something too far. And the possibilities I feel like arise from this is, at the same time, there are many of those people who do not necessarily feel engaged into social changing. It's also from many of those people that the best solutions come from, because there are so many problems that we are all experiencing together in our communities that rather we find the solutions, or rather we find the solutions. There is no other way. And it might be through government, it might be through our own organization, but it needs to come from us primarily, I feel. And I think that the internet, as we all mentioned here, is a crucial tool to do that. We had many Black, indigenous, female, feminist campaigns winning the city elections here in Brazil this weekend. And I think that has a lot to do with this connection, and has a lot to do with the rising of all those voices that haven't been heard for a long while.
That's amazing. Thank you, Midria. And I would urge everyone watching just to keep putting your questions in the chat. I'll refer back to them in just a little bit. So I want to zoom out just a little bit from the specifics, right? Where this whole event is about rediscovering certainty. And to do that, we have to look within. What is it about ourselves that we can actually change? Or what is it about ourselves that can motivate us to start creating that change or identifying that problem, and so on and so forth? So let's just take a second to reflect, right? How can you, not your friend, not your mom, not your dad, not your brother, not your sister, you make a difference in your community, right? And while you reflect, we'll kick it off with the panelists, right? So how about Midria, we'll start with you this time. How do you believe young people can become more active citizens, right? You've shared your story and how you've kind of realized that gap and started working with your friends. But for a young person watching this, how can they start on their journey and kind of work towards that?
So I think that in that answer, I go in the same direction of a point that Victor had already mentioned before, which is when we start acting, it's mostly because we can't stand the situation that is in our faces. It's just like we gotta act. So I think that the first thing to start acting is to understand what is the thing that gets you out of your mind. You know, like what can't you wake up tomorrow and see happening again and again and again. And I think that that's the most simple way to understand where do you want to act. And by the time that you see that, you can say, you can start thinking, who would like to be engaged in that too? You might show your project to other people. Maybe you might engage in a cause that is already happening. There are many collectives, there are many groups that are already doing great jobs. So you might join those, and maybe you might try to understand what fits better to your community, because most of the times those are things that are not necessarily already happening in our communities, in the places that we are the most close to. So I feel like that's a great first step. Try to understand what is a problem that you would like to contribute to solve a little bit into the end of your life, or maybe into the next years.
Incredible. And, you know, it's often the systems and the structures around us that we avoid, right? You talked about like clubs and community. Can we look at those places and see, oh, can I do something there? Or can I make a difference there? And I think that's such a valuable insight. Cool. Victor, let's go with you. What do you think we've learned from this pandemic about the changes we need to make as a society? And more, I guess, specifically, there's a lot of conversation around climate, around technology, political activism, all of these pieces that young people are involved in. How do we choose, right? There's so many problems that we're trying to see. So could you give us an insight on that?
Yes, of course. So I think the first thing that we do need to realize is there's a multitude of various topics or also various sectors or industries that one can get into and explore at this point in time. And just like everyone has said, it is right at our fingertips. For anything of discovery, whether that is reading the news or getting to understand more organizations like what Ashoka does, or just anything like that, is just mere education. So I want to say, be very fluid with the learning process, and that it doesn't have to just do with the school. The school is only a stepping stone to make things happen, but it doesn't stop from there for you to continue to foster that inner understanding of like what it means for you to dive a little bit deeper into a particular issue or to learn a little bit more from another person. Attending things like these summits, for example, are just as much of a learning experience as if you were just at school taking subjects or reading a textbook or anything like that. So the thing that I want to say is that take the time right now when you have the ability to just explore without the need to feel that you don't have to be flexible or anything like that, but rather just take a more open-minded approach to learn at any cost, whether that is signing up for mentoring sessions, going on LinkedIn, for example, searching up YouTube videos for role models that you really were dire in need to learn about from that you didn't have time to pre-pandemic. So just take those things in mind and use each one of these as learning opportunities, because when you take that down, then you will no longer see learning as just a very static thing. Also, I do want to say that like you really want to write each of these things down as if you touched it as a single milestone. So watching a YouTube video about a role model is like one thing that you need to write down, just as much as if you read a part or a preface of a textbook or a book that really inspired you to take action. So these small like steps, even though they look really minuscule, are actually part of those stepping stones towards your change-making journey that helps you identify key issues, find those allies, and start expanding at a very high rapid level.
Incredible. The stepping stones towards your journey. What a wonderful thing. And last but not least, Liv, you obviously in your journey have worked with some incredible individuals to create the change that you wanted to see in your community. And currently we have a lot of adults, people in power, people who can make decisions for young people listening. And so what would you say to those adults who are listening right now on how they can support young people to be active citizens?
So, firstly, I'd say everyone is in society, everyone is guilty of making stereotypes and assumptions about people in general. And adults don't realize that these are so damaging to young people, especially, particularly those in working class communities, when the media already demonizes us and sets a negative view of us as people. I think adults need to actively involve young people rather than tick boxing us and using us as a photo opportunity just to be able to say, oh, I've worked with young people. Here's a picture of the person I worked with. Like, that's not how it works. Because if we were to go and ask that young person, oh, what did so-and-so do with you? They'd be like, oh, they took a picture and left. Like, that is not effective. That isn't working. That is not the type of leadership we need, nor is it the type of collaboration we need. As young people, I think as well, leaders in society need to be comfortable handing over the power to young people and allowing young people to use their voices and kind of sharing the platform in a way, because adults are just making decisions like for us that are going to affect our futures, and it needs to be a balance, because ultimately we are going to grow up and we don't want to have to live a life based off your mistakes as people in power. And I think an example, particularly for people in bigger institutions, to get young people involved is work experience. It is so crucial and vital for so many young people, because if you have the capacity to recruit young people for work experience, offer those places to the people from disadvantaged backgrounds, from working class areas, for people who don't necessarily have these opportunities on their doorsteps, or they may not have family members who are already working in these institutions. Like, we need to provide opportunities for the young people that aren't necessarily acknowledged when these positions come available. It's always, oh, we'll give this job role to my sister's niece. No, that would make them your child, never mind. Sister's friend, so we've got to kind of expand your networking skills and to people that you don't necessarily know. Go into the communities that your business, your institution doesn't necessarily target, and don't just do it for a tick box. Don't do it because you need to have 5% working class people within your facility. Do it because you want to create these opportunities and because you want to collaborate with the young people of the future. There you go.
Amazing. That was awesome. And last but not least, Amaya, sorry, I think I made a mistake last time. What would you say to young people who are, let's say, sitting at home right now, thinking about how can I collaborate with other young people? Let's say exactly how Liv mentioned, right? Not everybody has that networking kind of skill set or has the immediate institutional knowledge to connect with other young people. So I guess the question is, what advice would you give to those young people to start collaborating with other young individuals? Amaya, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Sabat. So the first thing I will say is stop looking at yourself, because we live in a world where individualism is like super spread out, and it is really, really negative. So instead of thinking about your own interests, try to think about other people's needs. No, what are their needs? Why? How can I help them? Like Mitri and Victor have already said. And we have received many things in our lives that have been a gift. So it's time for us to give them back to society. I am super repetitive, but I will say like cooperation is the main thing. How can young people cooperate with others? Now social media is amazing. We can connect with everyone around the world. So no one has this excuse of, oh, I don't know how to cooperate or how to meet other people. And yeah, we are much more powerful when we work together. But however, I would like to highlight that working in a team is not always easy. in fact, is super, super hard, but we have to accept the challenge because I'm sure it will be worth it. I think that if someone has an idea, he or he has to share it with everyone. Tell your idea to your family, to your friends, to your neighbors, to the people you meet, because I am sure someone will be as full as you, and they will share your passion, and they will help you, and you will work together. And it is really, really important also to work with different people. Do not be always with the people like you, because you won't learn nothing. So create a diverse team with diverse perspectives that strengthen and enrich the project. And do not forget to accept these differences and transform them into superpowers, not into obstacles, because if not, it's quite simple to simply stay there and say, oh, I don't have the reason, so I won't do anything. No, please don't do this. And trust your colleagues and learn from each other, because as Victor said, learning from role models is much more interesting than learning just from the books you have at school. As there is a change maker power inside every person, we have to try to discover it.
Amazing. And I'm looking at the time and I can't believe we're almost at time. But so as we kind of proceed to our closing, we had a really interesting question from the chat, which talked about what would you say to the young people who don't care about engaging or being active, and how do we get them on board, right? So that's kind of a bigger question. So to close off, I would love to invite our panelists, so you can go one by one, to share one final key takeaway that for the audience to leave from this session with. So if it's a young person or an adult, what is one thing that you would like them to know before we depart? So Liv, I'm going to start with you, and then we can go on from there.
I'd say one thing is don't doubt yourself. You have the ability to change the world. Whether you know it or not, you will find it, and you'll find it in such a random way, and a way that you may not necessarily ever think about finding your power in your voice. And this is coming from a girl who cried her way through life. So I just say, don't doubt yourself ever. And your voice is your weapon. It is your superpower. It is going to get you far, even if it's the smallest thing as, oh, I disagree with what you're saying. You're sharing your opinion, you're creating controversy, you are making change in such a small way, but it will always lead to bigger things. So don't doubt yourself. You've got it.
Perfect. Victor, what about you?
Yeah, I think what I do want to say is that, like, when you're a change maker, the reason you become a change maker is that you're disrupting the status quo from the beginning. So if things are already normal in the first place and there's no need to prove people wrong or, see that like there's opposition or other things like that, because otherwise things would have already happened. So another thing that I do want to say is that the people that do not care necessarily, or the adults or the young people, they actually do care. The only thing that they're missing is that they haven't heard your story yet, or actually you haven't turned it into a version in which they can see themselves in the same light as what you see it from. So in that case, what you do need to do is to frame your story, frame the conversation in the perspective that they have as well, because when they see that it's something of importance to them, they will take it as much care as if they cared about the issue in the first place. There's no need for you to think about trying to push your ideas towards someone else, but rather just framing the conversation in a little bit more of a community light so that you guys can build similar connections and interests without the need to be super against someone or opposing someone, but actually seeing the fruit of the tree and realizing that like we are all coming from the same aspects, but just maybe different kind of mindsets or different backgrounds or upbringings. So from that experience, you never will go wrong. And second, just to echo what Olivia said, you just got to get through with what you need to do. And at the end of the day, it will work out, because I'm sure, as many of you guys have already heard from the audience, each one of us as panelists were nothing in the very beginning, very much maybe a few years ago or even recently. And the reason why we were able to do what we were able to do was that people were starting to see the difference that we were making, and also that people wanted to share their stories together. So they jumped on as part of a campaign, part of an organization or an initiative. So never be afraid to start building big and never start dreaming big at the same time.
Great. Madria, what about you?
Okay, so I'm gonna quote Helena Singer, which is an amazing woman that works at Ashoka in Brazil. She's also an anthropologist, and she was once mentioning something to me, actually yesterday. She was mentioning something about how much we shall not put into every teenager, every young people, the expectation that they will be social innovators in the same manner that we are as a group here, or that we are usually used to think about what is social innovation. So we do also need mayors. We do also need doctors. We do also need psychologists. We do also need all of those other people who are going to make society work and actually attend people's needs in many different manners. So I think that my key thought at the end of the session would be aligning this thought that not only not everyone will go through the same path in any place, whatever you are. May you be a professor at the university, may you be a doctor, may you be a mayor, may you be whoever you are, may you be a teenager that's at school and thinking, what can I do? After recognizing there is a problem, there is something that actually makes you pissed off, try to use the structures that you have. I think that using the structures is a great step. And those might be the structures from the school, those might be the structures from the community you're in. People are structures at the end. We are the ones who build it all. So we can review those structures and we can actually make new ones that we don't know until now. And just use what you have. Just use the resources in the best manner to reshape reality as you feel like it would be pleasing to the most of us.
Incredible. Maya, what about you?
My message will be like, stay close to passionate people, because sometimes young people has not found their mission yet, no? But I'm sure they will find it as long as they stay close to these people who is interested in these people too. Who is not a superhuman or who is not a superwoman. They are normal people, but doing extraordinary things in their daily life. So learn from them, because passion is more contagious than COVID-19. Is quite an amazing fuel for everyone. I think that the world is lacking something, and you have that something. So you can fill the gap that is in reality. So yes, this will be my message. Stay close
Wonderful.
to passionate people.
That's amazing. So we are nearing the end of our time here. And just to close, well, firstly, I want to thank our speakers and all of our participants. I think the caliber of the people in this room as audience and speakers are exactly the kind of community that we need to pave a new and better normal for us going forward. The challenges this year have made it clearer than ever that we each have a responsibility and indeed an opportunity to step into our change-making potential. It will require the most diverse stakeholders to come together, young people to renowned social change leaders, to architects of our most powerful institutions, and parents, right? They're a key part of this as well. But it first starts with a few, right? So I want to leave you with a call to action, and a very clear call to action. So if you're watching this and you have your phone near you, I urge you to pick up that phone and find a young person who you're close to. If you're an adult, find a young person in your life. It could be your son or daughter, or it could be a family member. If you're a young person who's trying to create change, text a friend to talk through what is that first step that you or that person can take in order to create change. And it is my promise to you that something beautiful will come out of that conversation. I want to thank all of you for being so engaged and actively participating in this session. But the last thing I'll say, I'll quote our founder, Bill Drayton: give yourself permission to be a change maker. That's all it is. It's all that it takes to find a better solution for your community. So thank you so much for everyone who tuned in. Thank you to our panelists. This is wonderful. I think this is the start of new friendship for all of us. So I hope we can continue that. And if you're interested in engaging more with Ashoka, you can find our contact info